The Toronto Blue Jays have announced their playoff roster, and it's pretty similar to what we've seen all season long and down the stretch here. There's one notable omission that we'll break down on this episode of Jays Digest, but playoff baseball is here, and get ready for it because the Blue Jays play in about 5 hours. So I'll break that down and much more on this episode of Jays Digest. What's up, Jays fans? I'm your host, Peter Vryonis, alongside host Nick Gosse. And the playoff roster has been announced. Ross Atkins made us wait around a little bit. We were kind of scouring around just Twitter and trying to find who is going to crack this roster. And one notable surprise, we thought that the Blue Jays were going to carry 13 pitchers, but they ended up going with 14 position players and 12 pitchers. So we'll break down the roster as this video goes along. But Nick, playoff baseball is commencing today with the first game at 2 o'clock between the Texas Rangers and the Tampa Bay Rays. That should be a fun series, but the one that we've all been waiting for is the Jays and the Twins. It's at 4:30. It's going to be a tough series. I don't think this is going to be a walk in the park by any stretch of the imagination. But the Jays have what it takes to rival the Twins. I know the Twins have been playing some decent baseball as of late. They have some scary pieces in that lineup as well. But the Jays are the favorite when it comes to betting odds, when it comes to overall just pundits predicting the series. So they should go out there and win this series, but you never know what's going to happen in playoff baseball. We didn't know what was going to happen last year, and we know how that turned out. So the Jays got to be ready to play today at 4:30. And we're ready to go. We're strapped in for this ride here.
Yeah, it's going to be I'm a little bit nervous, I'm not going to lie. I don't want to be disappointed again like last year. But before we do it in the video, make sure to hit the subscribe button. We're on the road to 8,500, and we'll cover you guys throughout the whole playoffs and the offseason. Now, Peter, let's just get right into it. Pause the video if you want. This literally dropped about 5 or 10 minutes ago. And like you said, we did our best to predict in other videos what was going to happen, but you never know what the team in the front office is actually going to do. And they ultimately went with 12 pitchers and 14 position players, which realistically makes the most sense. And Peter, the one omission we're all speaking about, a little bit predictable, but also a bit surprising, is Hyun-Jin Ryu does not have a roster spot on this team, which means that he will not be available out of the bullpen. He won't be available to start any of the games. And the only reason why this was a little bit, I guess, not confusing, but a bit strange is because obviously, we're playing against the Twins, who do not do very good against left-handed pitchers, which is something that we'll break down here now in a second. But again, you can look at you pause the video. We have Cam Eden on the roster. And we have, of course, Dalton Pompey, the normal guys. But the biggest, so they went with, essentially, they had to choose between Cam Eden and Davis Schneider. And they didn't want to make that decision. So they, just said to Ryu that he's not going to, make the roster, which makes sense, especially because Kikuchi is most likely going to be a bullpen guy against the Twins. But Peter, no Hyun-Jin Ryu, which would make sense against a team like the Rays, but you could have made an argument against the Twins because of how bad they are against lefties that maybe he, is available to be a long man. But I guess you say Kikuchi's that guy, and we also have Genesis Cabrera and Tim Meza as well. So no major surprises, but they did keep Cam Eden and Davis Schneider and Espinal and Merrifield. So on the offensive side of things, it's looking the exact same as it did for the past 6 months.
Yeah, it was clear as day the minute that Cam Eden got called up that he would have a role in this team and he would crack the postseason roster. Because why else would you call him up? Just to run a couple of times down the stretch before the end of the regular season? It wouldn't have made sense. He's obviously going to be this year's edition of Dalton Pompey for the Toronto Blue Jays. And I can't wait to see that electricity on the base paths. He's so fast. He's a burner. He's someone that can make things happen. And that was evident in a couple of instances where he did pinch run. And another thing as to why keeping all those position players is so important. If you pop up the roster for me one more time, Nick, Alejandro Kirk is still on this team. And he's probably going to have to get pinch run for a couple of times throughout these 2 or 3 games, however many games they play. And that's why you want that security. You want to have those extra position players. You want to have those extra bats. And as good as Espinal has been down the stretch against lefties, I would still rather put Davis Schneider in there as a pinch hitter just because of the power potential. So you're giving yourself a lot of leeway for the Toronto Blue Jays. Obviously, you don't want Tyler Heineman to play an extended stretch of the baseball game, but if it's a one-run game or if it's a tie game in the 8th inning and Kirk is on the base pass, you got to believe that they're going to run for him. And Heineman is more than serviceable as a backup catcher, but you don't want him coming in to run for Alejandro Kirk. You want that burner on the base pass, and that's why you know that some guys are only going to be put into very specific circumstances. Like Espinal would probably only come in if a lefty were on the mound, like Caleb Thielbar, or he would only come in if knock on wood, Bo were to get injured because he's the only backup shortstop on the roster. I still think Davis Schneider is above and beyond on the pecking order when it comes to pinch hitting against lefties, but they won't see too many in this series. But you want to have that insurance. So that's why they're carrying all these extra position players. I think the starting lineup is going to be the same. You're going to see Kevin Biggio at second base. You're going to see Vladdy at first. You're going to see Bo at short, Matt Chapman at third, and you're going to have Brandon Belt DH. I mean, the infield, you have 8 names on that list that we saw over there, but there's only going to be 4 or 5 guys that are playing for every game that the Jays have in this postseason run. So, yeah, I love that they went with this kind of roster construction. It gives them that flexibility. It gives them that leeway to go ahead and make those in-game decisions that could win you a ball game at the end of the day. So I like the roster. I'm glad that Davis Schneider got rewarded for his hot stretch of play. And who knows, if he does get an at-bat and he socks a double into left field, maybe he could get hot again. And maybe he's a guy that can be a huge part of this team down the stretch here.
Yeah, we never really know. And it's a good point about Alejandro Kirk. And in the playoffs, every run is that much more important. And I wouldn't be surprised if, he gets ran for often. And there's also a world where
for Bell too. And for Bell too. I forgot to mention that as
well. And there's also a world where I know you mentioned probably won't happen very often, but Tyler Heineman does pinch run for Kirk if we're in the 7th inning and you want to save Eden if it's a tie game or something like that, and you don't want to get rid of it. It's just there's so many opportunities for a pinch runner in a playoff game that Cam Eden makes all the sense in the world. And you mentioned Santiago Espinal, which they probably wouldn't pinch run for Bo Bichette very often, but I could see a very specific scenario where they might rather Cam Eden than Bo Bichette if it's, let's say, the game-winning run on third, and then in that case, you still have a backup plan for a shortstop, which would be Santiago Espinal. So it makes all the sense in the world that they went, with this, and our bullpen is deep enough to where, you have Yusei Kikuchi in the bullpen anyway, so it's not like you need any more arms, and I don't know, I'm just excited for it. And Peter, let's also go over a couple of notable things from yesterday, and then one other thing before I wrap up. So Jose Berrios is named the Game 2 starter, and this was probably more of a surprise to all of you than the wild card roster here. Is a lot of you wanted, maybe Chris Bassett or thought Chris Bassett would get the chance. Of course, Gausman starts on today. And one quick thing to note about Berrios is that versus left-handed pitching this year, Berrios has better numbers than Chris Bassett, albeit by a little bit. And they mentions here that of course they have Max Kepler, Polanco's a switch hitter, Wallner, Julian, so they have a fair bit of lefty hitters. They're probably going to load up on the left-handed side. So I think Berrios's pitches play a bit better. He has the changeup. Chris Bassett doesn't have the changeup, so I think it makes a bit more sense to start Berrios Game 2. But any quick thoughts on this before I get one more thing before I wrap up?
Yeah, and Jose Berrios, another thing that we got to mention is that he's coming up against his former team, and even though he struggled a lot last year, I'd like to believe that he is a big game pitcher and someone that you could rely upon. But having him start Game 2 as opposed to Chris Bassett, who's been a little bit better down the stretch here, just makes that Game 1 ever so crucial. And Kevin Gausman gives the Jays the edge. I mean, he's the better pitcher. He's the best pitcher that either team has to offer in this series. So the Jays have to go out there and start on the right foot in Game 1. He's got to shove. He's got to go out there and be the Kevin Gausman that we all know and love, and I think he's going to do that. But if you pull up the roster for me one more time, Nick, look at all those pitchers. I mean, I trust everyone on that list except for Trevor Richards.
Yeah.
So that's 11 pitchers that you could roll out there that are going to do a job for you. And Trevor Richards, maybe he won't come into any high leverage spots. I mean, you hope that he doesn't. But at the same time, if a pitcher blows up or if someone just doesn't have
decent mop-up guy.
we saw Trevor Richards come in for 2-3 innings at a time against the Rays and do a decent job, keep them in the game, and that's all you can ask for, I guess, out of a mop-up guy. So Richards is the reason why Bowden Francis is not on this roster, and Yusei Kikuchi offers that same type of insurance. But you spoke about the lefties in the Twins lineup. That's why Yusei Kikuchi is going to be critical as well. We're talking about him as a potential mop-up guy, but I wouldn't be shocked if he comes in for if there's 2 outs and there's a lefty. If Matt Wallner is up to bat, or if Edouard Julien is up to bat, I wouldn't be shocked if Yusei Kikuchi came in just to get 1 out or 3 batters, So he's going to have a role. He's not just some mop-up guy that's going to come in a 10-2 ball game. He's going to be very crucial in this series just because of all the big-time lefties that the Twins have in that lineup.
Yeah, and that's kind of the fun part of postseason baseball. Also, the stressful part, and kind of underwritten all this is John Schneider, second year as a man, or I guess first year as a full manager, second playoff series. It's up to him. It's going to be curious to see how he handles the bullpen there. And one quick final thing to note is that the Twins do have a fair bit of injuries. I'm not sure how their updated lineup is looking, but as of yesterday, a lot of the Twins fans are saying that they don't know if Byron Buxton's going to be available. He might be on the 10-day IL, or he might just be available as a pinch hitter, depending on how that goes. And then as well as a couple other their guys. They have a lot of injuries right now. Royce Lewis, who's been arguably their best hitter of the season, close to 1,000 OPS, is looking like he might not even crack the roster. Let us know in the comments if their roster is released as of now. But regardless, they have some injuries. A lot of guys who haven't had many at-bats recently. Correa's looking like he'll be back, but he's also a guy who was just on the 10-day IL. So any quick thoughts before we wrap up?
Yeah, I mean, they have all the pieces to be a very scary opponent in this first round. And that's why, I still rather play the Twins than the Tampa Bay Rays, just because I think the Jays match up a lot better against them. And we saw the Rays way too much. And the Rays, tactically, we know that they always have the advantage. If they see a team 6 times in the span of 10 days, they're going to get a pretty good read on them. And they played the Jays tough, even without some of their best pitchers starting in those games. So it's going to be a tough one. It's going to be a really tough series. But the Jays, as it stands right now, are the betting favorite. They were the underdog just a couple of days ago. So hopefully some of you guys didn't miss the boat on that one. But it's going to be so exciting, Nick. I can't wait. I mean, this is what we wait all season for. This season felt like a grind. This season felt like no other, and we were along for each and every ride. We were along for every day posting, and this is like the culmination. This is the start of something special, in my opinion. And you said we were going to be along for every postseason game and the offseason as well. Let's hope we have a lengthy postseason run to cover for you guys, and then we can worry about the offseason later. But right now, it's playoff time. Let's go. Let's ride, baby.
Yeah, and also, one quick final note before I wrap up. We'll have a post-game video for every game during the playoff series. So for those of you who enjoy those, make sure to tune in. But that'll wrap it up. Hopefully the Jays can have a different fate than last year, because about a year ago last year, it was a sad time to be a Jays fan. So thank you guys for watching. We'll see you later tonight.